In this video, we will connect each piece of the robot arm to the correct bones of the armature so that everything moves with the bones when we create poses. So we've got our armature, we've got our resting pose, so now we want to actually attach the pieces of our arm to the bones. So let's come back over here to object mode. And the way we do this is we first select the piece that we want to attach, then we press and hold Shift and select the armature. And remember the difference between active and selective. Whatever we select last while pressing and holding Shift will be the active selection. So if I press and hold Shift and I keep selecting things, you can see whatever I select last will have that brighter orange highlight. And then all the other ones will still be selected but have the darker orange. So let's select our base again, which makes this the only one that's selected and active. Then press and hold Shift, select our armature, which makes both of these selected, but the armature is now the active object. Now we come up here and go into pose mode, and then select the bone we want this piece to be attached to. So that's going to be this one. And with both of these now selected, we can press Control P, and we have this Set Parent To pop up. And from here, we want to choose bone. So now if we take this and press G, you can see that the base joint moves right along with that bone. I can do the same thing. If I press R to rotate that, it rotates with the bone. So it's completely attached to that base bone. So I'm going to right click to cancel that action. If you haven't seen the first part of the series, that's the same in anywhere in Blender. Let's go back into object mode. If I click and drag, I can move stuff around, and I'm clicking and dragging still, holding my mouse button. But before I set this anywhere, I can right click and cancel that. Same thing if I press G to grab, and I'm moving this and I say, nope, I don't want to move that anymore, right click to cancel. So attaching these pieces to the bones can be a very tedious process. So to make it a little bit faster, we can use shortcut keys. So if I select my armature and I press Tab, it will toggle me back and forth between object mode and edit mode. But if I press Control Tab, it will toggle between pose mode and object mode. So Tab toggles to edit mode, and Control Tab toggles to pose mode. If I'm in pose mode, Control Tab, and then I press Tab, that will also toggle between pose and edit mode. If I'm in edit mode and I press Control Tab and hold it, I have this pie menu and I can select which one I want to change it to. So I'm going to go back to object mode, and we're going to select the next piece, which is this one, and then Shift select our armature. And this is where we can save time by Control Tab into pose mode, and our bone is already selected. This is the bone that I want to connect this to. So Control P and then choose bone. So now if I press G to grab this bone, both of those move along with that base bone. Perfect. So I'm going to make this even faster for the next two pieces. Since I know that I want these two pieces to be connected to this one bone, I'm just going to select both of them at the same time. So Control Tab, back into object mode, select our joint, press and hold Shift, select this one, and still holding down Shift, we can select our armature. Control Tab into pose mode, select this bone, Control P, and choose bone. Now if I press R to rotate, you can see those two pieces rotate right along with that. So you can see this inside piece here that we made. I want to actually connect that to this one as well. So I'm going to right click to cancel that, Control Tab to go into object mode, and then if I select this one and then select that one again, it'll recognize that something is behind it and it will make that selection. This is actually really useful if you have a whole bunch of things in front of each other and you don't have really any visual way to select that directly. And that also toggles. So if I just keep clicking, I'm just continuing to click the left mouse button and it will toggle back and forth between all of the pieces that are in front or behind it. So with the inside piece selected, I'm going to Shift select my armature, Control Tab, this bone is the one I want, Control P, and bone. So now if I either press G to grab or R to rotate, then all of those follow along. Right click to cancel. All right, so now it is time for your challenge. Your challenge, should you choose to accept it, is to finish connecting the pieces of the robot arm to the bones. So we've got 4 pieces left, and I will let you decide how to connect those pieces to the armature. So go ahead and pause the video here, and when you're done, come back and I'll show you how I do it. Alrighty, welcome back. Are you all set? Have you finished connecting the pieces to the bones? Let me show you how I would do it. So we have 4 pieces left, and we have 1 more bone left to connect it to. And the fastest way to do that is select all of these by holding down Shift, selecting the armature last, Control Tab to pose mode, select this bone, Control P, and bone. And now everything else is parented to that last bone. And that is how it's done. And now, if I move the bones, you can see the robot arm follows with it in whatever pose that we put the armature in. But of course, as cool as this really isn't a whole lot different than what we had before when we were just selecting the pieces of the robot arm and moving them individually, just like this. And if this is the only way we could move the bones, then this would be a whole lot of work for not really any payoff. However, this is not the way an armature is meant to function, rotating single bones like this. An armature is meant to function where we take 1 bone and move this bone, and everything else moves along with it. So that way we only have 1 thing to move, just like if you were to grab your hand or move your hand, the rest of your arm would follow with it. Bending at the joints, such as your elbow and your shoulder. And that movement in 3D space is called inverse kinematics, which is what we're going to do next. But let's get our resting pose back by making sure we're in pose mode, selecting everything, going to pose, clear transform, and all. And now we have the pose that we want. So when you're ready, head on over to the next video to arm your armature with some inverse kinematics.